Do you find it difficult to mix, match and blend skin tones? Do you struggle with the wide variety of colours and how to mix them to get the right skin tones for the portrait that you are painting? In this first part of this two-part portrait series, I will show you how to mix skin tones for pale, mid and dark skin tones. So let's get on with the tutorial. In today's tutorial, I will be using the Winsor & Newton Cotman half pan set of 45 pans. If you would like to see the clip where I review this set, please click on the card above. I'll also be using this palette here, and I will be using a selection of brushes including silver, black velvet brushes, and I have a pre-prepared sheet here that I have sketched out in my sketchbook for each of the skin tones that I will be looking at. I mentioned in the introduction I will be working from some stock images today, and the links are in the description below. Once you've established your skin tone of your person you're painting, you will need to know that there are several different tones for each skin tone to represent all of the lighting and how it falls on your subject, as a portrait would look flat otherwise. If there's a really intense sunlight, for example, that means that there's going to be really intense white. So you may even want to leave areas of your paper blank when you're painting your portrait. When thinking about your choice of reference photograph when you come on to painting your portrait, you need to think very carefully about your choice of photograph. Is it harshly lit? Will there be more variation in the tones? And if you're a beginner artist, please think very, very carefully about choosing an image like this rather than one that has softer tones, which would be easier for you to choose as a starter. We're now going to come on to the mixing element, and the charts are constructed slightly differently for the different colour tones. I have written on the main screen the colours that I have used, and the base for the pale skin tone is water, and then to that you add the colours. So for this first one it's burnt sienna, raw umber, and then we move on to the next one, which is burnt sienna and cadmium red. It's fairly straightforward. The only thing that I would advise you do is just make sure that your brush is continually clean. So if you want to carry on watching. One thing I would point out as we move through this tutorial is the way that the water or the paint sits on the paper. If I was painting this on watercolor paper, it would sink in better, and as you move throughout this tutorial you will notice that some of the colours don't mix very well and they just sit on top of the paper. That's because this is 140 GSM paper and not watercolor paper. So if you're using actual watercolor paper, say for example Arches, which is a paper that I use quite regularly in other tutorials, you'll notice that the paint reacts much better to the paper. So when you compare the whole graph at the end or the whole chart at the end, just bear that in mind, that it's not as smooth as you would probably be used to seeing. Now we are moving on to mixing mid-tones, and the base colour for this will be burnt umber and water, but it's a very watery mix. And then you will go down the colour chart and mix each of those colours, a tiny amount of that colour, to make that colour more of a warmer or a colder colour. So the first one is a mixture of burnt umber and raw sienna. Then the next one is burnt umber and cadmium red. So watch this next part of the tutorial to see the wide variety of tones that you get within this mid-tone range. I'm really pleased with this mix of colours. However, because of the texture of the paper and the fact that the watercolour mix was quite watery, it did not really blend as well as I would like. So next time I would probably use watercolour paper for this demonstration. For the dark skin tones section, there is no particular base. There are just a selection of colours mixed with water to make them lighter. So please watch this next stage to see what colours you should use for which tones and shades. As with the previous samples, I am really happy with the selection of colour tones here. However, the tones aren't as smooth as I would like because of the paper surface, but if I'd have used watercolour paper, this would probably have worked out a lot better. If you found this tutorial useful, make sure you check out the watercolour playlist where you will find tutorials and reviews that relate to watercolours. Also, don't forget to check out the second part in this series, How to Paint Portraits in Watercolours. Don't forget that the links to all resources used in today's tutorial are in the description below, and if you would like to see more content like this in the future, make sure you hit the subscribe button and hit the bell to be notified of future content.